Okay, a warm welcome to tonight's petition hearing and to those who may be following us on the Council's YouTube channel. The agenda has been published. There are some at the back of the room if you haven't got it, and there are also resident feedback forms which have now become yellow, I think. They were orange last time I saw them, but they've now become yellow. No fire drills are expected tonight, so if the fire alarm goes off, please, the officer team will lead us out, and there are fire exits either side of us as well as the exit you'll have come in. If I can ask, please, that mobile phones are switched to at least silent, and I will remind councillors in particular, because theirs are the ones that have a habit of going off on me. Okay. Before I move to the agenda item tonight, I'll do the introductions. I'm Councillor Eddie Lavery. I'm the Cabinet Member for Resident Services. This petition falls within my portfolio and therefore my decision making. I have two officers with me tonight. Steve Clark from Democratic Services is my clerk, and Stephanie Waterford is our Head of Trading Standards, Environmental Health, Licensing and ASBIT, and this falls within her service responsibility. So we have one item tonight. Declarations of interest. Any declarations of interest?
Just for yourself. So if there are any,
not for me. No, definitely not.
Sorry, just on that. Well, for myself, I'm a driving instructor. So
no, it's councillors. I gather most people in who are petitioning on this probably have a personal interest in it, but it's if any councillors present have an issue they ought to declare. It's a public meeting tonight. There's only one item, and that's it. The report was published a week or so ago, so I assume everybody's had a chance to read it. I'm not going to read it out. The rules of this are fairly straightforward. You have 5 minutes to present your case. I'm reasonably relaxed because I've only got one petition to do tonight, but 5 is the guide. So if I can ask, we stick as close to that as possible. I may then ask some questions. If there's council present, you may wish to say some words. Again, brief as usual, please. And I will obviously ask the officers for commentary on any matters that are raised, and then we will decide how we're going to take it forward. So with that, I'm going to keep quiet for a bit, and if you would like to A, introduce yourself, and then B, read out what you've got.
Okay, so I'm Paul Kerr, a local driving instructor in the area for 39 years. Live in Hayes, resident of Hillingdon, and I raised the petition regarding the issuing of these fixed penalty notices to driving instructors in Hillingdon Council car parks. I believe that banning instructors was included in the PSPO because of the problems at just one car park, which was Lake Farm Drive, which was close to the Hayes Driving Test Centre. These problems are historical. They were reported in 2018-2019. The Hayes Driving Test Centre actually closed in October 2019, so I believe the problems, particularly in this car park, no longer exist. Just bear with me for a moment. So Hillingdon residents that are learning to drive need to be able to practice bay parking in car parks. Firstly, to acquire the skills to park safely, and secondly, to become aware of the hazards they're going to encounter when parking. At some time, we're likely to be teaching your family and other residents' families and friends to drive, and they need somewhere to practice safely. Most alternatives to council car parks are privately owned, and although some allow us to practice, many do not, and at any time the private car parks could tell us to leave and not come back there ever again. This also applies to driving test examiners as well. They don't get any special permissions to use the privately owned car parks. They just go there and hope not to get challenged. So we know generally which ones we can use. Once a candidate has passed their driving test, of course, they're likely to be using Hillingdon car parks, quite possibly at times parking next to your cars. So obviously it's important that they can do it safely for the interest of everybody. Another benefit of allowing instructors to use the car parks is, we believe, crime prevention. particularly Lake Farm, we often see telltale signs of broken glass on the floor of these car parks where vehicles have been broken into. If instructors are using the car parks regularly, then surely it must be a deterrent. And I believe there are statistics from other instances to back this up, that it does reduce crime if instructors are using car parks. Our use of car parks that we are currently allowed to use is pretty much self-regulating. If we go to a car park and there are instructors already practicing there, we tend to move on and find somewhere else, as it doesn't make sense for us or our customers to wait around. Therefore, it's highly unlikely that car parks will get too busy with learners practicing, because we see 2 or 3 instructors there, we go somewhere else because we're just going to be in each other's way. Also, every learner is at a different stage in their learning, so again, it's unlikely that we'll all be practicing the same thing at the same time. If I can give Chestnut Avenue car park a mention, a car park with 70 bays, any time you go into Chestnut, there's never more than 2, mostly empty, but usually maybe 2 to 3 other users of the car park, dog walkers usually in the far end, so that means 68 empty bays, and it's very, very, very rarely used by instructors. Bay parking is part of the DVSA's national curriculum for learning to drive. It's included in the national standards for driving cars and light vans, and is also one of the manoeuvres that may be included on a driving test. I think it's important to realise that when assessing bay parking, examiners and instructors make observations and awareness number 1 priority. The manoeuvre is assessed on observations, control and accuracy in that order. So the observation part is the most important part. So in those car parks, we're teaching our pupils to look around for children, any other road users coming out of other bays, etc. So observations is always the priority. For example, a candidate is far more likely to fail on the test if they don't do their observations correctly, rather than if they don't get within the lines of the bay. Okay, it's more important that they do the observations. As instructors, we have to pass 3 very stringent tests to become an instructor, with the emphasis always being on safety. We have regular checks with the DVSA supervising our lessons to ensure that we are maintaining our standards. To remain on the register, an instructor must be a fit and proper person. Therefore, we believe the safest way for learners to practice this is under the guidance and supervision of a qualified instructor, but we must have areas where we can practice. And for last part of that is just, please trust us to use these car parks responsibly. We really do try. With regards to the agenda, just like to comment on the following. Point 4, with Hayes Driving Test Centre now closed, the effect of these activities is no longer continuing and is unlikely to reoccur. That car park was very close to the test centre. We admitted it did start getting overused once the Hayes Driving Test examiners started using it. Mainly it would be people with the test at 11 o'clock going in there at 11:15 to do last-minute practice before their test. But yeah, it was a small car park and it probably was overused. But now Hayes Test Centre is closed. That's unlikely to reoccur. We noticed that before introducing the PSPO, local authorities are required to consult appropriate community representatives. Driving instructors are directly affected by the PSPO, but as far as I'm aware, no driving instructors were consulted. Point 6, proposals for a PSPO should be reviewed to determine how they impact on certain groups. I don't believe the impact on driving instructors was considered. Point 8, in 2019 reports were received highlighting problems at Lake Farm car park. No other car parks were referred to in that report. Point 9, signage was mentioned. Signage was only installed at Lake Farm and not in any other car parks. The signs were very poor, and basically small print was just added under the usual car park restrictions, such as no alcohol, no barbecues, and then added under that was no learners to practice manoeuvres. I know from experience that instructors didn't notice this added to the bottom of the signs, so it was a case of instructors not realising rather than deliberately ignoring the signs, which has been suggested on the agenda. It says also that residents confronted instructors and were met with a barrage of abusive language and aggressive behaviour. I have spoken to a councillor who shared that story with me, as it was she was the person involved, but to my knowledge, that is the only incident that I'm aware of, and in this case, the instructor should have been reported to the DVSA under the fit and proper persons, and also it does raise the question of, how was that instructor confronted? Were they asked or gently told that they're not supposed to be using the car park, or was it started, the confrontation, was it started in an aggressive way? I honestly can't comment on that. But as far as I'm aware, that's the only case that has been mentioned. If I have time, I'll just refer to the human rights and impact assessment. You'll have to bear with me if I just quote a few parts. The implementation of a PSPO is to be applied to everyone within the designated area. However, it may have negative impact on particular groups. If the PSPO is implemented, it will be important for authorised officers to consider the needs of the individual and their personal circumstances in order to make an informed decision as to the appropriate action to take. It will also be important for authorised officers to ensure that any action taken is proportionate to and balanced against the risk posed. As far as I'm concerned, there's no risk of an instructor practising bay parking in an empty car park or in a car park where there's only 2 vehicles. It has outlined the need for consistent yet flexible approach to the application of the PSPO. One of the concerns is that the PSPO could be used as a tool to unfairly target sections of the community. That's what we feel. It is important to evidence that the PSPO is therefore not used or is not perceived to be used in this way. Under Section 59 of the Antisocial Behaviour, Crime and Policing Act, public spaces protection order may be made by the council after consultation with the police and any other relevant bodies or groups or individuals. As I say, I don't believe that any instructors or anyone connected with this was consulted, but I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong. I think that's pretty much it. So over to you guys, really.
Thank you for that. I think I've heard and understood what you've said. I will have some questions in a moment just to kick this off with officers. Stephanie, is there anything you wanted to clarify out of what's been said?
No, not at this stage, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, fair enough. In that case, that does us. Thank you for that. Okay, just for my clarification, because clearly I wasn't directly involved in the agreeing of this, so I'm working from what I've got. Could you just clarify for me on the consultation and the impact points that were raised by the petitioner?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so when we introduce the PSPO, obviously you're familiar, we do it in a rolling 3-year period, and when we do that we carry out an extensive consultation. However, I do note your comments about the particular affected group, so what I can do is I can check if there were any kind of national bodies consulted or anything like that. I don't actually have that information at the moment, but I can clarify that for you. But yes, I've noted your comments about the consultation. It was advertised on our website, and it was we're satisfied that all the legal requirements for the consultation were followed at that particular point. With regard to the impact assessment that's been carried out, that is a requirement under the Equalities Act. So when we're talking about equalities, we are talking about those protected groups, which are actually listed in the assessment itself. So a group of driving instructors would not be regarded in the same way as those other protected groups, but I do note your comments about the sort of relevant community groups and affected groups that may have been affected by this PSPO in the consultation. So that's something I can come back and clarify at a later date on that specific point. But the actual impact is limited to those protected groups.
One final question from me, and by the way, this doesn't indicate where I'm going with this, it's just a question at this stage. This applies to all council car parks. Do we have the ability to be more prescriptive, or would this in general just apply to all?
It currently applies to all council car parks, so for the green spaces and also other car parks as well.
Right.
May I just mention that there are no signs up in any of the car parks? apart from their car.
I've noted what you said about the signage, and we have looked at that since in order to kind of enhance or to make it clearer. You'll appreciate there's lots and lots of, there's a massive list of things under a PSPO, so we do have to be quite selective about what goes on the sign, how big and where it's placed, but I have noted what you said about those locations.
We don't at this stage, but do we have the ability to decide that we'll only include certain car parks in our order?
Absolutely. So we can do that as part of a PSPO review, and we may only decide to select a number of car parks where that applies and not to others. So yes, absolutely, we do have that discretion.
Okay.
Can I ask if that was the case, how would you notify local driving instructors of that? Or would it just be with signage in the car parks?
It would be down to signage, but also through the consultation. So I think from your comments, you felt like you haven't been consulted with during this implementation. So I think if we were going to make any changes to that clause specifically, we would do that through the consultation, but also through signage, so that there was a clear definition between where it was applicable and where it wasn't, if we were to go down that route in the future.
The difficulty I have with that, you've quoted me one particular example, there will be a lot of car parks across this authority, and some will be busy, some won't be, some will be busy at certain times of day, some won't be. I can sometimes create more problems than I solve. Not that I ever wish to do such things. Okay, right. I think I have understood the issues. Now, the report before me has two recommendations in it. One is that we meet, and the second is our sausage review as part of the public consultation in 2023 is that reconsultation hidden?
For next year,
yeah,
we will start that in the spring, so it will be enacted from October. So we will, if we kind of go 6 months back from that, we will start with the proposal, discussions with the Cabinet Portfolio Lead, and also the public consultation. So it will take place between spring and summer next year as an indicative guide.
Okay. Right, I think I've got everything I need. Okay, I will take away and discuss with the officer team whether we will make... At the moment, the recommendation before me is that I include this as part of the consultation when the PSPO is being reviewed in 2023. I will review with the officer team whether there are opportunities to change that or whether it would make sense to change that. But in line with kind of all the other workloads that are out there, because if I plug this into something, I'm pushing something else along a curve, and there may be also good reasons why we need to hold to the current timetable in terms of the rest of this PSPO and the way it's working. But let me just reflect on that before we make a decision. I'm not going to make one now. I don't have to, so I'm not going to.
Can I just say, if we have to wait till 2023, would it be possible to consider asking or instructing the wardens to stop issuing the tickets in the meantime until it goes to consultation? Because we, as instructors, we need these places to practice. Examiners need to use those for driving tests.
No, I understand the points that have been made. I've got to be clear, and the teams have got to be clear with the instructions we give our enforcement teams. I can't start giving them varying sets of instructions, because otherwise we will end up in a situation where they don't know what they're supposed to be doing. Any variation to what's already agreed has got to be very carefully done, and I'm always mindful. Enforcement is a difficult enough business for our enforcement colleagues and our contractors, but we do need to be very specific and clear about what we're asking them to do, because otherwise we we run the risk that we just undermine the whole thing. And if we've got an order in place and we should be enforcing it, then it's very difficult for us not to be doing that. If we're coming to the conclusion that we ought to change it, then that's a slightly different matter. But I don't want to preempt that.
Can I also ask if issuing a fixed penalty notice is proportionate for an instructor teaching a bay park in a completely empty car park, for example, Chestnut Avenue? Is it proportionate or? Well,
it's proportionate in the sense that if you are if an offence is being committed that's covered, then the fixed penalty notice is going to be the answer.
I would add that we do have most of our offences under the PSPOs is normally a zero tolerance. So we have things like littering, car idling, spitting. So most of those, and I appreciate we're not talking about
they are all antisocial. We don't do
a similar thing, but it's under the legislation that is caught out in the same way. And we do have a zero tolerance approach to that enforcement. But as Councillor Lavery says, we are in the process of reviewing that, and we will certainly be reviewing and refreshing our PSPOs next year, if not before.
We are just trying to carry out our jobs, which is absolutely essential, and if we can't teach these learners in car parks where there has to be some activity going on to make them aware of their surroundings, occasional people coming in, if we can't teach them there, where can we teach them?
Okay. I'll call a line on it there, if I may, because I think I've got the issues. I understand them, and so does the team. We need to now just go away and see if we can and are able to do, or it makes sense to us to do something about this, and what other implications there might be. I'm not going to promise you an exact timescale because that can be difficult. I would have thought we should be able to get back to you. If I said a month, that should give us about. Yep, that's fair.
I think so.
Yep. It may be quicker than that, but I just need I need to make sure I've got time to get the feedback and consider it, and then work out what we are and we're not going to do, and then we'll work from there. So if I say a month, then that gives us all a kind of timescales. That takes us towards the end of July, and hopefully we can come back with something by then. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you all very much. Thank you for coming. Thank you for raising it with us, and then we will come back to you with some answers. Thank you.
Thank you.